The crying started 3 weeks after we brought her home from the hospital. Not the normal crying that all newborns do when they're hungry or tired or uncomfortable. This was different. Heartbroken, like the sound of someone grieving for something precious they had lost. Every night, around 11 p.m., our daughter Zoe would begin crying inconsolably. Not screaming or fussing, just crying, deep, soul-wrenching sobs that seemed far too mature for a 3-week-old baby. "What's wrong with her?" my husband Michael would ask, his own eyes filled with tears as we took turns trying to comfort our daughter. "I don't know," I would whisper, rocking her gently as she continued to cry. "The pediatrician says she's perfectly healthy." But healthy. Babies don't cry like their hearts are breaking. Healthy babies don't sob as if they're mourning a profound loss. And healthy babies definitely don't stop crying when you whisper, "I know you miss your other home, sweetheart. I know you want to. Go back." But Zoe did. The moment I spoke those words, her crying would subside into quiet sniffles, as if she were grateful that someone finally understood her pain. My name is Anna, and this is the story of how my daughter Zoe spent the first 2 years of her life desperately trying to return to a family she remembered from a previous existence, a family whose love for her was so strong it transcended death itself, and how we eventually discovered that sometimes the hardest part of being reborn isn't learning how to live again. It's learning how to let go of the life you left behind. The crying continued every night for months. PM, like clockwork. Michael and I tried everything. Different feeding schedules, room temperature adjustments, white noise machines, swaddling techniques. Nothing worked. Nothing except acknowledging her pain. "I know you miss them," I would say, holding her against my chest as she cried. "I know you want to go home to your other family," and every time, without fail, she would calm down, as if she were relieved that someone finally understood what she was trying to communicate. By 6 months old, Zoe had developed other unusual behaviors. She would stare at photographs of elderly couples with intense focus, as if she were searching for familiar faces. She would reach toward pictures of babies and toddlers with longing expressions. She would become agitated when we visited other families, especially families with grandparents, and would cry when it was time to leave. "She's very social," the pediatrician observed during one of our frequent visits. "Some babies are just more aware of their surroundings and more responsive to other people." But this felt like more than social awareness. This felt like recognition. Like Zoe was looking for people she expected to see but couldn't find. When Zoe was 8 months old, she began pointing. Not at toys or interesting objects like most babies, her age. She would point at empty spaces and babble urgently, as if she were trying to get our attention about something invisible to us. "What is she pointing at?" Michael would ask, following her gaze to blank walls or empty corners. "I think she sees people we can't see," I would reply, though the words sounded crazy even to me. But what else could explain the focused intensity of her pointing? The excited babbling directed at seemingly empty spaces? The way she would reach out as if trying to touch someone who wasn't there? By her first birthday, Zoe's nighttime crying had evolved into something even more heartbreaking. Words, barely recognizable, but clearly intentional. "Home," she would sob into her pillow. "Want home. This is your home, sweetheart," I would tell her gently. "Mama and Daddy's house is your home." "No," she would cry, shaking her head vigorously. "Other home, with Nana and Papa." Nana and Papa. Names she had never heard in our house. Names that had no connection to our family tree. But names she spoke with the familiarity of someone who had been loved by people who called themselves Nana and Papa. "Who are Nana and Papa, Zoe?" "My people," she would say through her tears. "My real people." The phrase, "my real people," cut through me like a knife. Were we not her real people? Had we somehow failed to become her family in the way she needed? But as I researched child development and spoke with other parents, I began to understand that Zoe's attachment to Nana and Papa might not be a rejection of us. It might be evidence of connections that existed before she came to us. By 18 months, Zoe's memories of her other home had become remarkably detailed. Nana made cookies, she would tell me while we baked together. Special cookies with sugar on top. What kind of cookies did Nana make? Circle cookies, with holes in the middle, and jam inside. Jam-filled sugar cookies. A specific type of baking that suggested European or old-fashioned American traditions. What else did Nana do? Sang songs. Pretty songs in the kitchen while she cooked. Do you remember any of the songs? Zoe would begin humming melodies I had never heard before. Haunting, beautiful tunes that sounded like lullabies from another era. Where did you learn those songs, Zoe? Nana taught me. When I was little. You are little, sweetheart. No, when I was little before. When I lived with Nana and Papa in the blue house. The blue house, another specific detail that she mentioned consistently. Tell me about the blue house. It had white flowers in the front yard, and a swing on the porch where Papa would rock me to sleep. What else do you remember about Papa? Papa had soft hands, and he smelled like tobacco and peppermints. He would read me stories about bears and rabbits. Did Papa work somewhere? Papa worked in the garden. He grew vegetables and taught me which ones were ready to eat. What did the garden look like? Big, with rows and rows of green things, and tomatoes on tall sticks, and corn that was taller than me. The level of detail was extraordinary for an 18-month-old. Most children that age have limited vocabulary and simple concepts, but Zoe spoke about her memories with the clarity of someone recounting recent experiences. Zoe, when did you live in the blue house? Before I came to you and Daddy. When I was Sarah. Sarah, a complete identity separate from Zoe. Who was Sarah? Sarah was Nana and Papa's little girl. But Sarah got sick and had to come here to be Zoe. What kind of sick? Hard to breathe sick. Like when your chest hurts and you can't get enough air. Respiratory illness. Possibly asthma. Pneumonia, or another condition that could be fatal in a young child. Was Sarah scared when she got sick? A little. But Nana and Papa held her hands. They said Sarah would be okay, even if her body stopped working. What happened when Sarah's body stopped working? Sarah went to the place where babies wait to be born. But she was sad because she missed Nana and Papa so much. Is that why you cry at night? Because you miss Nana and Papa? Yes. Zoe loves you and Daddy. But Sarah, part of me, still wants to go home. The conversation was both heartbreaking and illuminating. Zoe wasn't rejecting our family. She was carrying the grief of separation from a family she remembered loving and being loved by. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of trying to redirect Zoe's memories or convince her that we were her only family, I decided to help her process her feelings about Nana and Papa. Tell me more about Nana and Papa, I said as I tucked her into bed. Will you help me find them? She asked hopefully. We can try, sweetheart. But first, I need you to tell me everything you remember. Over the next several weeks, Zoe provided an extraordinary amount of detail about her life as Sarah. She described a small house painted blue with white shutters and a wraparound porch. She talked about Nana's kitchen with yellow curtains and a big wooden table where they ate breakfast together every morning. She remembered Papa's workshop in the garage where he built birdhouses and taught her to use safe tools like sandpaper and measuring sticks. She described family dinners where Nana would light candles and Papa would say grace. She talked about bedtime stories, morning cartoons, trips to the grocery store, and lazy afternoons in the garden. A complete life with people who had clearly loved her deeply. What was your full name when you were Sarah? I asked. Sarah Elizabeth Murphy. Sarah Elizabeth Murphy. A searchable name. Do you remember where the blue house was? On Maple Street. with the big tree in the backyard that had a tire swing. Do you remember what town? The one with the lake where Papa took me fishing, and the ice cream shop with the pink sign. Rural. Setting with a lake. Small town with local businesses, possibly somewhere in the Midwest or Northeast where such communities were common. Do you remember Nana and Papa's names? Nana Rose and Papa Frank. But their last name was different from Sarah's. Different how? Sarah's mama and daddy died when Sarah was little. So Sarah went to live with Nana and Papa because they loved her so much. Grandparents raising their grandchild after their own child's death. A common family arrangement that would explain the deep bond Zoe described. What happened to Sarah's mom and daddy? Car accident, when Sarah was 2. Sarah doesn't remember them, but Nana showed her pictures. So Nana and Papa raised Sarah from the time she was 2? Yes. Sarah lived with them for 4 years before she got sick. 4 years. From age 2 to age 6. Long enough to form profound attachments. Long enough to consider them her true parents. Long enough to grieve their loss deeply when she died. That evening, I began researching death records for young children, named Sarah Elizabeth Murphy. What I found made my hands shake. An obituary from the Lakeville Gazette in Minnesota, dated March 15, 2018, 2 years before Zoe was born. Sarah Elizabeth Murphy, age 6, of Maple Street, died peacefully at Children's Hospital after a courageous battle with acute pneumonia. Sarah was the beloved granddaughter of Frank and Rose Thompson, who raised her after the death of her parents in 2014. Sarah Elizabeth Murphy, age 6, Maple Street pneumonia. Raised by grandparents Frank and Rose Thompson. Every major detail that Zoe had provided. I kept reading through tears. Sarah was known for her love of gardening with her Papa Frank and baking cookies with her Nana Rose. She enjoyed fishing at Lake Minnewaska and visits to Scoop's ice cream parlor on Main Street. Gardening with Papa, baking with Nana, fishing at the lake, ice cream shop. All the activities Zoe had described. Sarah was preceded in death by her parents, Jennifer and Mark Murphy. She is survived by her grandparents, Frank and Rose Thompson of Lakeville. Services will be held Friday at Lakeville Community Church. In lieu of flowers, the family requests donations to the Children's Respiratory Foundation. I found the contact information for Lakeville Community Church and, with trembling hands, called the next morning. I know this will sound strange, I told the pastor who answered, but I'm trying to locate information about a little girl named Sarah Murphy who died there in 2018. Sarah Murphy? Oh yes, such a tragic loss. Frank and Rose Thompson's granddaughter. Beautiful child. Do you know if Frank and Rose are still alive? Oh yes. They're both still very active in our congregation. They've been struggling with grief, of course. Losing Sarah was devastating for them. Would it be possible to speak with them? May I ask why? I took a deep breath. This is going to sound impossible, but I believe my daughter has memories of being Sarah. Specific memories that match details about Sarah's life that aren't in public records. There was a long pause. You know, the pastor said finally. Rose has always said she feels Sarah's presence sometimes. She's mentioned dreams where Sarah visits her. Would they be willing to meet with us? I think they might be very interested in meeting your daughter. 2 weeks later, we drove to Lakeville, Minnesota. Zoe had been unusually excited about the trip. Are we going to see Nana and Papa? She had asked repeatedly. We're going to meet Frank and Rose, I told her carefully. But they might not be the same Nana and Papa you remember. They will be, she said with absolute certainty. Nana Rose always wore the pink sweater with the flowers, and Papa Frank had the scar on his hand from when he cut it building my dollhouse. Specific physical details that could be verified or disproven. We met Frank and Rose Thompson at their small blue house on Maple Street. The house Zoe had described perfectly. White shutters, wraparound porch. Big tree in the backyard with a tire. Swing. When Rose answered the door, Zoe's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. "Nana!" she screamed, launching herself into Rose's arms. Rose caught her instinctively, her face flooding with emotion. "Sarah," she whispered. "It's me, Nana. It's Sarah. I came back." Rose began sobbing, holding Zoe tightly against her chest. "I knew you'd come back," she cried. "I knew you wouldn't leave us forever." Frank appeared in the doorway, took one look at Zoe, and dropped to his knees. "Sarah, baby girl, how is this possible? I'm Zoe now, Papa Frank, but I'm still Sarah inside." She ran to him and threw her arms around his neck. "I missed you so much. I cried every night because I wanted to come home. We missed you too, sweetheart, every single day." Frank was openly weeping, holding Zoe as if she were the most precious thing in the world. For the next several hours, we sat in the living room while Zoe reacquainted herself with Frank and Rose. She pointed out things that had changed since her death. "You moved my rocking chair," she observed, pointing to a small child's rocking chair that was now in a different corner. "We couldn't bear to look at it in its old spot," Rose explained. "And you got new curtains in the kitchen. How do you know about the kitchen curtains?" Frank asked. "Because I can see them from here. They're blue now instead of yellow." She was right. The curtains visible through the kitchen doorway were indeed blue. "Do you remember your dollhouse?" Rose asked. "Yes. Papa Frank built it for my birthday. Is it still in my room? Would you like to see it?" Zoe nodded eagerly. Rose led us upstairs to a small bedroom that had clearly been preserved exactly as Sarah had left it. Toys on the shelves, books on the nightstand, clothes still hanging in the closet, and in the corner, a magnificent dollhouse built from scratch. "Papa Frank made every piece of furniture," Zoe said proudly, running her hands over the tiny details. "Look, here's the little kitchen with the stove that really opens, and here's the bedroom with the quilt that matches my quilt." She pointed to the bed, which indeed had a quilt that matched the miniature version in the dollhouse. "Do you remember how Papa Frank hurt his hand making the dollhouse?" I asked. Zoe nodded and turned to Frank. "Show Mama Anna the scar from when the saw slipped." Frank held out his left hand, revealing a prominent scar across his palm. "How did you know about that?" he asked in amazement. "Because Sarah was worried when Papa Frank got hurt. She wanted to kiss it better." "You did kiss it better," Frank said, his voice thick with emotion. "You kissed it every day until it healed." We spent the entire weekend in Lakeville. Zoe showed us places that had been important to Sarah. The corner of the garden where she and Papa Frank had planted sunflowers. The kitchen counter where she stood on a stool to help Nana Rose bake cookies. The spot on the porch where they sat together, every evening to watch the sunset. The dock at the lake where Papa Frank had taught her to fish. Every location matched Zoe's previous descriptions perfectly. But more importantly, Frank and Rose confirmed details that weren't visible or obvious. "You always insisted on putting extra jam in the cookies," Rose told Zoe as they baked together. "Because the jam is the best part," Zoe replied, exactly as Sarah had always said. "And you never wanted to use the fishing pole with the blue handle," Frank mentioned during our visit to the lake. "Because it was too heavy for Sarah's little hands," Zoe explained. "Sarah liked the red one better." "That's right, the red one was your favorite." By the end of the weekend, there was no doubt in anyone's mind that Zoe carried Sarah's memories. But the most remarkable moment came on Sunday evening, as we prepared to leave. Zoe took Frank and Rose by the hands and led them to the garden. "Sarah wants you to know something important," she said seriously. "What's that, sweetheart?" "Sarah wasn't scared when she died, because you held her hands and told her she would always be your little girl." Rose started crying again. "Do you remember being in the hospital?" "A little. Sarah's chest hurt and it was hard to breathe, but Nana and Papa never left her alone. We were with you every moment, Frank confirmed. Sarah knows. And Sarah wants you to know that she's okay now. She gets to be Zoe and have new adventures, but she still loves you forever. Will we see you again? Rose asked. Yes. Mama Anna and Daddy Michael said we can visit lots of times. And maybe you can come see our house too. We'd love that more than anything. As we drove home to Chicago, Zoe was calmer than she had been since birth. Are you happy now? I asked. Yes. Because now Nana Rose and Papa Frank know that Sarah didn't forget them. And how do you feel about having two families? Lucky. Sarah's family loves her, and Zoe's family loves her too. Do you still want to go back to your past home? Not to stay forever, but to visit and make sure Nana and Papa aren't too sad. What if they are sad? Then Sarah, part of me, will help them remember that love doesn't end when people die. That night, for the first time in 2 years, Zoe slept through the night without crying. The desperate grief that had haunted her since birth had finally been acknowledged and honored. She no longer needed to cry for a home she couldn't return to, because she had found a way to bridge the gap between her past and present families. Over the following months, we developed a regular routine of visits with Frank and Rose. They became Zoe's Minnesota grandparents, while my parents became her Chicago grandparents. She thrived having multiple sources of love and multiple sets of family traditions. With Frank and Rose, she gardened and baked and fished and heard stories about Sarah's early life. With us, she discovered new interests, made new friends, and created new memories as Zoe. Am I still Sarah? She asked me one day as we watched her play with Frank in the garden. You'll always carry Sarah's love inside you, I told her. But you're becoming more Zoe every day. Is that okay? It's perfect, because Sarah's story led to Zoe's story, and Zoe's story is just beginning. What do you think will happen when Zoe gets older? I think Zoe will have wonderful adventures and make her own memories. And maybe someday, when Zoe is very old, she'll have her own stories to share with the next person who needs them. Will Sarah's love go with me to my next life? Love always goes with you. That's what makes love special. Good. Because Sarah learned from Nana and Papa that love is the most important thing to remember. By age 4, Zoe's memories of being Sarah had begun to fade naturally. She still loved Frank and Rose and enjoyed our visits to Lakeville, but she no longer spoke about going home or being two different people. She had integrated her experiences into one continuous sense of self. Do you remember being Sarah? I asked her recently. A little bit, like remembering a really good dream. Are you sad that you don't remember as much? No, because the love part doesn't fade. I still know that Nana Rose and Papa Frank love me, even if I don't remember all the things we did together. And you know that Mama and Daddy love you too. Yes, and that's enough love for anyone. Today, Zoe is 6 years old, the same age Sarah was when she died. But Zoe is healthy, happy, and surrounded by two families who adore her. Frank and Rose have found peace, knowing that Sarah's spirit lives on in Zoe. Michael and I have learned that love truly transcends death, and that families can be created in the most unexpected ways. And Zoe has learned that it's possible to honor the past while embracing the future. Mama, she said to me last week, do you think Sarah is proud of who Zoe became? I think Sarah is very proud, because Zoe carries Sarah's love forward while creating her own beautiful life. And do you think when Zoe is old and dies, someone else will remember Zoe's love? I hope so, sweetheart. I hope love keeps traveling from one person to the next, forever and ever, like a circle that never ends. Exactly like that. Tonight, Zoe sleeps peacefully in her bed, no longer crying for a home she can't return to, no longer grieving for people she can't see. She has found a way to keep Sarah's love alive while fully embracing her life as Zoe. And Frank and Rose sleep peacefully in their blue house on Maple Street, knowing that their beloved granddaughter found her way back to them even if in a different form. Love transcended death. Grief transformed into joy. And a family that was torn apart by loss was reunited by the impossible magic of memory that survives beyond the grave. So I ask you this: when a baby cries every night for a home they've never seen, when a toddler speaks with longing about people they've never met, when a child carries memories that belong to someone who died before they were born, when the grief of separation transcends the boundary between life and death, do you dismiss it as confusion or psychological disturbance? Or do you consider that maybe love creates connections that survive physical death? That the bonds between family members can be so strong they resist the finality of the grave? That consciousness might choose familiar souls to continue relationships that death interrupted? That sometimes the hardest part of being born isn't learning how to live, but learning how to let go of the life you left behind? I used to think death was the ultimate separation. Now I know that love creates bridges across the impossible divide. Some homes exist in memory. Some families span multiple lifetimes. Some love refuses to be limited by the boundaries of individual existence. And sometimes, if we're very fortunate, we get to witness the reunion of souls who promised never to let each other go. The rest is just geography, and love knows no borders.